Hello, another episode of Write Once, Read Many. This time, it is about chapters 18.3 and 18.4. Alright. Oh, whoops. Well, I had the art up instead of the speed draw, but now we're going to see the speed draw knowing what it's going to become. Alright. Hey, Vale. Let's see here. Do this. Do. Sorry, I haven't had much to say. I'm in, trying to quickly get everything in order here. Alright. Well, we'll have to see about opening that later in the stream. Okay. So, Vale says, I noticed that Pale completed restarting it when I travel for work this week. It's like 3.6 million words long. Man, it's so long. 2 plus 4 times 5 said, Wildbow is going to be announcing his next serial tonight. Oh, tonight! Tonight! Oh, Greg's here, but with a different account name than usual. I think he's going to be back with the normal account name, probably. Let's see here. You know what? 18.3/18.4. Who between the Undersiders and the local heroes would you like to see have an interaction like what we saw in these chapters? It's a little vague, but the idea is that you're saying, like, oh, I want to see Gru have to talk to Kid Win, because it would be funny. What do we guess the new title will be? Well, it depends on what we think it's going to be in. As 2 plus 4 times 5 has chosen G for Gorm. I'm not sure what Gorm means. But in December of 2022, 2 plus 4 times 5 had a dream that the title of Wildbow's next story will start with the letter G. I don't know enough about Twig to make up the title of a Twig spin-off or side story, but I think that the next one is likely to start with a T. It's my hope that the next story, as it always is a short bit of parahumans. I will be self-indulgent and say that I just want him to make more parahumans. And I think for good titles for parahumans, I think the title Well would be good, like the Well of Power. So, Vale says, I don't think he will ever write another parahuman story after the grief that he went through with Ward. Well, that's too bad. And I read his post-Ward document, how he's like, I feel like Ward failed, but, like, I think Ward is better than Worm. Like, directly better. So I don't know what to tell Wildbow here, but maybe someday. Maybe. And I've already gotten a troll answer with a little emoticon face from 2 + 4 × 5 about my question here. But we'll talk about answers to the audience participation later. Man, that's crazy. I didn't know that a new one was coming out. Greg says that his new story is going to be Twit. It's about the introduction of social media into Twig's world. Dear Lord. Okay, so I took forever trying to draw a portrait, and I only ended up drawing one portrait, and I didn't write any stream documents, but I did listen to the chapters a whole bunch of times while I was drawing. Vale says, viral posts have a different feel in Twig. Made of real viruses. I made up that last part. So 18.3, it picks up where 18.2 had left off, and it is the direct conversation between Miss Militia / the heroes at the scene of destruction in Brockton Bay. It starts off with Skitter saying, like, no, we didn't take Vista, and then Tattletale justifies why it's definitely not them. Miss Militia's like, I don't know, you're pretty shady. And then Tattletale says that she doesn't think that Vista was killed, because Miss Militia's all like, I'm going to pay close attention to what you've said, and the way you're phrasing things. Although I think Tattletale still plays a lot of games in these conversations. So it wasn't that effective. But they bring up a few things going back and forth, like, you almost killed Triumph the other day. We probably shouldn't trust you. And then she's also saying, like, the other time that they come over is whenever they're like, we need your help for the Slaughterhouse 9 or the Endbringer or whatever. And then Imp pops into existence, shocking everyone, including Skitter, and is like, it's the second thing. We gotta fight an Endbringer or whatever. I mean, this is all very paraphrasy. But, yeah, they go on down, and, they're talking about various stuff, why, Tattletale decides it's time to dish out the dirt, and so they say they were working for Coil. Some of the people are kind of shocked. They say that Coil's dead, which this is another point at which Skitter thinks Tattletale's playing games, that she knows they think he's dead because of the bombing, but she knows that he's dead because of shooting him in the head. Oh no, gotta clock into work. Goodbye, 2 + 4 × 5. Hopefully you can listen along in the background at some point, like you can sometimes. So she mentions that the Travelers are upset with them. Miss Militia's like, Genesis couldn't do this. We've done research on it. Get your facts straight, Tattletale. And then Skitter brings up, like, you remember how people couldn't figure out all the targets of the Slaughterhouse 9? And then they're like, yeah, well, I wasn't actually the last target. It was Noelle. And then they're like, Noelle? I don't even know who that is. And Tattletale spills the beans that the Travelers have extra members that don't see normal day-to-day stuff. It's Oliver who is not worth mentioning what his power is, and then Noelle, who is a great threat, and then Miss Militia is able to connect the dots, and it's like, that's why 40 extra people died in New York. And then So Tattletale sort of starts to give them more info about the travelers and their background, and and that Noelle has taken Vista captive. And then before Triumph can go down the rabbit hole of like, what does she want with Vista, then Miss Militia's like, don't try and confuse me. I'm not getting caught up in your story. And then they basically refuse to answer her question of how they're partially responsible for this. And Assault chimes in a bit. He's pissed. Miss Militia is trying to see if they had to do with Coil's sort of weird faulty bombing at the mayoral debate, and then they just immediately like hardline go like, nope, we didn't do that. And then Tattletale sort of explains that they can test the remains of the stuff as long as they like move it out of town, and that they'll be able to find out that the bombing was staged and that real people didn't get blown up. And then Miss Militia's like, it's pretty convenient that you're telling me this because it'll take until after the situation is over for me to get confirmation on any of that. Oh, Vale says, the bombing probably killed him. Yep, that makes sense. Skitter not being sus at all for 5 straight minutes as she shiftily looks about. The good thing is that she can't see anything, so she's shiftily looking about way less often right now. So, you know. It's one minor benefit of her being blind is that she's slightly less bug-like. Boop, 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 boop. And then Gru says, like, we're not going to be left in a better position if you do what we're asking, because we're asking you to call in all the big guns, the best heroes. And then Tattletale says that there's a Class S threat. Everybody's a little shook, and then Skitter says something that I think that she knows is a lie. She says she's a nascent Endbringer. Triumph says bullshit, and I mean, yeah, it's weird. That one thing, I'm not sure, like, maybe that was to just sort of get the blunt point across, but generally, I'm not exactly sure why Skitter said that when she doesn't probably believe it to be true exactly. Unclear. Actually, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know how much Skitter does or doesn't believe that she's becoming an Endbringer. Tattletale said she wasn't, but we don't hear a lot of internal voice saying what Skitter thinks about this, so that's a bit odd. Yeah, they say that she probably has Vista, and that they offhandedly mention that Coil's precog had given them numbers about this. Then they say that they sent Diana Alcott back to her parents, and Ms. Militia sends Assault to go sort of confirm this one way or the other, and get him out of the conversation, you know. So they start dishing the dirt on Noelle's actual powers. Strong as Leviathan physically, not as tough because she doesn't have the, like, folded up crystal body that the other Endbringers have. And then Weld is like, she's big? And then Tattletale's like, she's big. And I think I didn't have, like, a good sense of scale for her at this point, but she not only is bigger than the last time we saw her, but gets even biggerer pretty soon. Greg says, I think she's not sure, and making it out to be as bad as possible means the heroes will actually respond appropriately. Okay, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And then Tattletale tells us the important part that everyone should lead with, that everyone tells at the last part, but I think is the thing that you should put first, aside from all that other important stuff. That she makes copies of people with powers, or like alternate versions of their powers. Like, to me, that seems like a pretty big deal. Maybe the biggest deal. Because I gotta say, if Noelle was just like the tough monster that she is, but didn't have the copying power, they could take her on. They'd lose some people or whatever, but they could take her on. But the copying power, that's the part that makes her way stronger than you'd think. They undersell it. And I maybe it's because Wildbow knows that we'll oversell it to ourselves, because to me, I mean, if you can copy all the strongest powers and just have a huge battery of capes to send at people, clearly that's ridiculous. And that's why you gotta treat this like it's a real situation. If she was just a big strong monster, they could blast her with powers. Anyway. Moving down this chapter, we get they say that they need to take a hostage to make sure that the Undersiders cooperate with them, and they need to go downtown. And at first, Miss Militia wants it to be Rachel, but then Skitter's like, look, it's obvious why it shouldn't be Rachel. She'll flip out, and I'll go with you, and I'll get rid of my bugs, and I'll give you my backpack or whatever, my utility compartment. She corrects, in fact, that it's not a backpack later, so I take it back. And then, what do we get here? Gru doesn't want her to go, but she's like, it's fine. Plus, I don't really listen to what Gru says anyway. When she takes her bugs off her, there's a funny moment where Clockblocker is grossed out, and he says, so many fucking bugs. They have to weigh as much as she does. And then she's just like, not as much as you'd think. It's true, bugs are very light for the space they take up, but it's very funny. She's just a gross weirdo, and doesn't really see what others see. So she hands Miss Militia her utility compartment, and then Triumph pats her down, and then finds the paper, which we remember that Taylor has still not read these two papers. They're from Dinah. And she wants to apologize to Triumph, but doesn't know what to say, so she doesn't do it. And then she gets inside the van. Miss Militia has Assault ride her motorcycle. And then, so it's Miss Militia, Flechette, Clockblocker, and Weld, I think, inside the van. And Kidwin. Yeah, Clockblocker, Weld, Miss Militia, Flechette, Kidwin. Yeah. And, And that's what you can see here. This is when Miss Militia is picking through her utility compartment. And, let's see here. Vale says, I'm sorry, it's such a complicated sentence. Yeah, I mean, it's also, I wasn't going to necessarily discuss what's on the notes, so. Secret notes, which, this is a medium spoilers podcast, but I think it's interesting that she doesn't learn until later. Whatever Dinah needed to tell her. And she's given the papers back. That is not in question. Triumph only wants to make sure there's no cocaines, sclopamine powders, anthrax eyes. It's definitely the multiple for anthrax. But but they're just regular ass notes. And then Clockblocker tries to pull off like a Star Wars 3 line. He's like, "You're shorter," looking at you like this. "Tall for a girl, but not tall." And then, again, like a classic comedy Taylor, she goes, "Sorry." Like no other. And then Clockblocker notes that indeed there are still bugs with them. And then she's like, "Yeah, I didn't get rid of all of them. I just automatically have tiny bugs flying around, like, patrolling." And then they don't, like, tell her she needs to get rid of all the bugs. But Weld is like, that's your Thinker 1 power. And then, let's see here. So picking through all the compartments and stuff, she finds the gun. And the gun only has 1 bullet left. Ominous Taylor stuff. Ominous Skitter stuff, I guess. And she goes, "I've been shooting boards so I could break boards. And I shot Mannequin. Weld can vouch for me on that." She doesn't say that, but he saw it. And then she mentioned she hasn't reloaded it, and she doesn't shoot a gun much. And Miss Militia says obviously, which I think is supposed to roast her in some way, that Skitter doesn't even understand. Like, she's not taking care of it right, probably. They find the spider silk, and Kidwin's like, "Oh, spider silk." And they find all the bullshit she's got: the pepper spray, the change, the smelling salts, and the needles. And then I think it's funny that she's like, "Please leave everything where it was." Oh man, I really like the conversations in these 2 chapters. I think they're a lot of fun the whole way through. Let's see here. Clockblocker lean through. So yeah, they ask about, like, what's happening. Skitter says she doesn't know what she's gonna do after defeating Noelle, and that she and Tattletale are actually partners. Clockblocker starts demanding answers from her. And he's like saying how they violated the code a bunch of times. The unwritten rules have been broken and unwritten again. And then they bring up Shadowstalker. They go back and forth. She's like, "Shadowstalker sucked and you knew it. She was trying to kill me and Gru with real arrows." And then Miss Militia's like, "Do you have evidence?" And then Skitter's like, "You wouldn't care if I had evidence." And then they sort of go, "There's procedures to follow." And then she's like, "It's all this red tape. That's why we're in charge of the city, and you lose to us all the time." And then they go back and forth over, it's like, you've got bad guys on your team too. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I think the "I'm sure you know what I'm talking about" is from later, but it's, they have Clockblocker basically getting chewed out by Miss Militia saying to stop engaging with Skitter, and he's like, "I'm gonna go over this point by point." And Skitter's like, "I'm not gonna flip out. I'm just gonna talk to you." And Clockblocker's like, "I don't care if this goes on my record or everything is bad. Like, this is the one chance I get to talk to Skitter." And also Skitter does keep being evasive. Like, she's like, "I had a bunch of smoke inhalation. I was in a burning building that I had to escape from by shooting the boards." And then they're like, "So he set your headquarters on fire like you said?" And he's like, "No, this was different. This is the second thing. This is a different burning building. It's fine." And then he's like, "How do you justify whatever you're doing?" She's like, "I won't deny that I've done bad stuff. I just think that the stuff I care about is different than the stuff you care about." Kid Win tells Clockblocker to stand down, and he's like, "Okay, so how do you justify everything?" And she's like, well, I've actually been able to help lots of people in my territory. And then Clockblocker says something that I think is totally unfair, which is, except the ones Mannequin and Burnscar killed. It's like, if they hadn't been there killing people, they would have just been elsewhere killing people. So it's hard to justify that from a hero standpoint, I think. It's like a trolley problem where someone blames you for the trolley having been there, even though you were just the guy at the lever and you didn't set any of this up. They're like, I can't believe you set that trolley down those tracks, regardless of what result happens. And then what do we got? We got lots of back and forth about Glory Girl and Panacea. And I think that Skitter does a really good job of, like, laying out her case on this one. This is, I think, her strongest point, where she's like, we tried to get her on the team. She needed outside perspectives, but she wasn't listening to anyone. And then she talked to Jack. Vale says it's classic hero behavior, but I wasn't sure if you meant them being dicks to Taylor or which bit, but people being dicks to Taylor is classic hero behavior. Oh yeah. So Clockblocker says the whole, like, we got to see all the gross bodies after Leviathan killed all those people, but they didn't let us see the alive Glory Girl. So it must have been pretty fucked up. And also, Panacea healed my dad or whatever, even though I don't say specifically my dad. And then she's like, I didn't even know about any of that until this conversation. And it's like, man, funny how you never know about this shit until later. I think he says that part later, but it's just because every one of the points where she sort of comes out okay, I didn't know about that till later, or till just now. Which is like what's gonna happen with the Shadow Stalker / Sophia conversation. He brings up battery, though, and then she's like, 1, miasma, 2, I was literally with Jack and Bonesaw, so I couldn't do anything, and I had to find Panacea, and then, then that sort of ends that. I mean, he pretty much is just like, fine, miasma, whatever. Let's get back to talking about Shadow Stalker. And then he's like, do you feel bad about this? I'm like, actually curious. And then she's like, I don't know. I kind of feel bad. And then he's like, do you sit in your lair cackling? And she's like, no, it's like this. I feel shitty all the time. And then he's like, but you're gonna keep doing what you're doing. And I don't know. I think he's being like, not over the top, but it's kind of like he's pushing back on statements she hasn't said half the time. Vale says she actually cackles, though. Such lies. She cackles about some things, but rarely. And it's usually when something really bad is happening to her. Like, whenever she's suffered an unreasonable amount of physical damage, she'll usually start laughing from, like, pain hysteria and stuff. Which has got to seem really unsettling, because she'll, like, do that and then keep fighting you with her brain. So, yeah, it's pretty messed up. Taylor rules, though. Where are we? Oh, yeah, this is where he's like, oh, you're always doing stuff, and you always have a reason you justify it with, and you're like, oh, I didn't know about the consequences. And then, this is the point where Miss Militia comes in again and is like, you're just gonna, this is over. You're done. Clockblocker says he's more or less fine with the end of that, and thinks that he was ahead on the argument. Skitter doesn't correct this and was just like, damn, he could have really hurt my feelings if he knew me better. And then she thinks through some bad stuff she's done about how she killed Coil and stuff, and how she feels weird that she doesn't feel as bad as she should. But her perspective is basically like, he was so bad and like was so like going to keep doing what he was doing forever that it was just the only choice was to kill him off. And now she's saying that Clockblocker's arguments made her feel bad. And then she's not entirely sure how she feels now, so she's kind of a stormy, emotional landscape. And she's like, I don't think that I would, like, change anything I've done, but I also don't feel good about what I've done, so I don't know how to deal with that. It's kind of something that I've been boxing away for the whole story. Several minutes after they stop talking, they get to the PRT offices, and they, Clockblocker, he gives her the welcome in the door, holding it open like a proper gentleman, like a sarcastic gentleman. And then she thinks, I'd entered once as a prisoner and a thief, once as an invader and kidnapper. It was an eerie thing to be entering as an ally to the good guys when I'd never felt further from being one. And yeah, so there's a lot of self-doubt. There's a lot of, classic Taylor stuff going on here. She's like, wow, I should have probably started questioning my own actions sooner. But also, like, now that I'm questioning them, I don't see different answers. Ugh. So, classic Skitter stuff. Thoughts about this chapter? I love the conversation between Clockblocker and Skitter. It's amazing. The whole car ride's epic. I listened to these chapters like 3 times each this morning because I was trying to just like at least do something while I was doing the drawing that took forever. Yeah, I didn't get tired of them. Like, I'm not a super fan of the opening conversation of 18.3. It's like good, but it's just not like amazing like the van ride. And then 18.4, kind of same. It's going to have a similar structure where there's like a part that's serviceable at the beginning, and then the part when they're in the conference room, which is awesome. It's just something like when Skitter has to try to just have a conversation with these people and gets a chance to, the conversations are always amazing. Like even back to arc 3 before the bank robbery, when she tries to like negotiate with Armsmaster, then it's like that conversation of her talking to one of the heroes is just like really great. I think it's a really good chapter. And then like same with these two. So moving on to 18.4. They get in the elevator, and there's kind of various, like, we've got to move in these different groups than usual because they've got to balance out how many heroes and villains are in any given spot since the heroes don't trust them. So they go downstairs, and they've got like half their group, and they're going upstairs. They're not going downstairs. So their sort of war room and headquarters and conference room, all that, are up on the 3rd floor. And so, using bugs that she left in the building last time she was here, because she keeps leaving goddamn bugs all over the place, Skitter senses all the people, and she realizes that they're in the area that she was in when they had attacked last, and she got teleported in by Trickster. So she's like, yeah, I know this place. This is one of my many scenes of dubious crimes. The deputy director is here because Coil is dead, who is Calvert. He's kind of just the director. They just don't know that yet. He is savvy enough that he can tell something weird is going on, and he doesn't think that his people have arrested the some of the most notorious villains in the whole country. And he's right. And then Miss Militia drops a bomb on him. Like, I think there's a new S-Class threat. And then possibly a fourth Endbringer. Everyone there's like, oh my god. They have the same reaction as Weld had at the previous conversation, where he's just like, fucking shit. Why? Why do these Endbringers keep showing up, they ask. But then they start getting conversations going on the phone. They're contacting heroes. Miss Militia says if they're going to try to kill her, this might be their only chance to do it. Because, like, from her perspective, what's to say that Noelle doesn't really become an Endbringer and more or less unkillable? The fact that they're killing her disappoints Taylor again. She wants to save Noelle, which I guess is theoretically possible. And then they're like, we haven't heard back from Director Calvert. And then everybody, one of the plainclothes detectives says, he's gone silent. And then everyone there sort of turns to Skitter and looks, is like, we know you did this. And then they're like, okay, we're going to split people up into different rooms so that you don't just all flip out on us. And then they negotiate things so that Rachel is in the same room as Skitter and Tattletale, so that they can sort of keep a little lid on her for now. They split up the other three into a different room, because it's just the Undersiders, sans Parian, who is, I would say, not yet a full Undersider. I think that she's like negotiated with them and stuff, but she's not really an Undersider at this moment. So she has refused to fight. They'll talk about that in a little bit, but she absolutely refused, and Flechette went to escort her back to her end of town, which is, I guess, Tattletale's old headquarters. But Groot says more or less, like, as long as Skitter says it's okay, Imp and Regent need to suck it up, and we'll come into this other room. They go into the conference room, and Rachel and Tattletale are there, but also Triumph is there with, I think, Clockblocker and Weld or something. Yeah, it's those three. And they just immediately start talking about... oh, wait, no. It starts in with Taylor apologizing to Triumph, which she wanted to do before, but couldn't bring herself to do. And now that Rachel's here, Rachel's like, don't apologize to them. They're terrible. And Triumph is like, I can't believe you told them my secret identity. Even though it's like, how do you debrief from that mission and avoid the... I don't know. I think it's an unreasonable ask that she wouldn't have talked to the others about it, really. And then she justifies that Tattletale would have figured it out anyway, and that Bitch does not care about things like that. I mean, she's also got a public identity. Skitter clarifies that she is indeed sorry, and then Triumph says she didn't need to apologize. He's known what he was getting into since he started as a Protectorate member after the wards. He saw all the S-Class threats. Leviathan, Seamerg, Slaughterhouse 9, Nilbog, the Sleeper. That's all 6 of them. And then, he's mad about his dad's career. Tattletale says the city was fucked, so the mayor's reputation, regardless of what he did now, was fucked. And then sort of, they discuss what the city looks like from the outside, and Tattletale clarifies that, the media has portrayed the situation as being even worse than it is. And then, somebody asserts that they might have covered their kidnapping of Vista with all this ruse, and then it's like, then Rachel just very bluntly is like, why would we want her? And they talk about how if they were just like looking to accrue power, they would have kept Dinah. And when asked what they want, Tattletale's like basically saying to integrate ourselves into society, to like control the underworld so that like we are like fully embedded and other people can't root us out. And he's like, that's scary. And she's like, I don't know, it's not that bad. It means that you have like a more or less friendly opposition side versus like before. She doesn't mention it, but I always think like before the Undersiders, the fucking Empire 88 had a huge control over the city. That seems like really bad, and like an incredibly bad look for the city overall. Like the mayor's reputation seems like it would be worse when it's like white supremacist city versus like post Hurricane City. I don't know. I just have a different perspectives on things probably. But I'm with Taylor whenever she's like, do you really think it was better before the Undersiders controlled things? I mean, don't you remember how terrible it was? Greg says, S-Class threats, sure, but it turns out Triumph's weakness was a B-class threat. Oh, man. Bees. Let's see here. At one point, Triumph asks about, like, the way they're talking about Rachel, and it's like, don't you care that they're, like, gonna bench you and that they talk about you like this? And Rachel's like, I really don't care. If I can live with my dogs and people aren't bothering me, that's literally all I want. And we do get this funny back and forth. Calmer than you were a week and a half ago, if that's the case. Dunno. That was then. This is now. Oh, God. Let's see here. Okay, so I guess it's only been Triumph up to this point, and then that's when Clockblocker and Weld join him at this point. And then they keep having some conversations. Miss Militia is like, you're not gonna have another back of the van situation, Clockblocker. She's wrong, by the way. They kind of do anyway. And she says the clairvoyants have come back with answers. We get 11th Hour saying he gets an 8. I don't remember if we meet 11th Hour again, like if he's a character who comes back in this story for a cameo. I'm not sure. Appraiser says the read is purple. And it's a gradient scale of some kind where we don't know the parameters. Although clearly Tattletale does, because she brings it up in a minute. And then the third thinker is Weld's homie, Hunch, who is like a Hunchback of Notre Dame guy who can see the future, maybe. I don't know what his power is exactly. But Hunch says it's bad. And what is this? A great Tattletale quote. I know Appraiser offered a purple velvet diagnosis for his previous ratings on Endbringer attacks, so that's not the reason it's so low. Purple velvet. You gotta love some of these powers where they're just like, I don't know, it's blue, I guess? What does blue mean? Pretty bad. Blue means it's pretty bad. Tattletale knows their entire handbook by memory and by superpower. She keeps insisting that this needs to be an S-class threat so that they can't have people, so that they can turn people away, but that people can't decide to not show up. And Miss Militia's saying why it's not an S-class threat, and Tattletale's like, you're being an idiot. Like, it's very obvious that she could become self-replicating if she, like, duplicates someone's power. And she doesn't mention this, but, like, what I always think of in this conversation is that the powers don't always come back exactly how you expect them to, so when she makes a bunch of clones, it seems like sometimes the person is, like, surprised by what the core kernel of the power actually was. So, like, I feel like the potential of her making a duplicator out of someone who had a different power is actually kind of high. Because she can, like, spit out people with tons of manifestations from the same power. I don't know. I just think that Tattletale's right here. Shocker, I think Tattletale's right about something. She's not always right, but when she is, she's really self-righteous about it. So yes, this makes Tattletale very angry that they're not making it an S-class threat. And then Miss Militia's saying that they just have to be selective about who they let show up, and they'll turn away anyone with problematic interactions. But they totally don't, because there's a person who shows up in the coming chapters who totally has a duplication power. And they don't turn her away. They let her fight. It's insane. They should be like, no, we're actually going to make you teleport further away than you would normally go. Those crazy bastards at the Protectorate. Let's see here. Arms Master is no longer in the city, so Kidwin's the only tinker. Ba-da-da-da-da. Let's see here. And then they're gonna, like, sort of... They're taking a few minutes to get people in the room, and they're teleporting forces in right now. Strider was killed during the Leviathan fight, so they don't have a mass teleporter, and probably have to bring people in one by one. Yes, the three boys and the three girls are still there. Tattletale makes jokes about them falling in love, a la Romeo and Juliet. And then the boys are like, as if. And then they do fall in love. Tattletale, once they're sort of conferring with each other, Tattletale brings up that they can't use Bitch's dogs or Skitter's bugs, really. And then Skitter's saying that they have ranged fire, so that they just need to be support capes for the heroes who can shoot at range and stuff. And Rachel tacitly assents to using her dogs as transport for heroes. Skitter thinks she can tie up Noelle without actually touching her, but I don't even remember how it works. I feel like the silk itself is consumed by the body upon touch, much as many sort of organic materials. But I could be wrong. I don't remember exactly. They talk about the idea of using Regent to slow her down. Tattletale doesn't think Regent's power would work. They talk about how, like, they remind us that he couldn't grab Leviathan, and then they, like, muse on the idea of having an Endbringer for a second. And then they're like, nah, it's too much of a threat. We gotta stay in that danger zone where they don't super want to kill us. They bring up the utility of several more powers. Then they're like snapping at the heroes like, get in on this, you fools. Power interactions. Tell us what kinds of tactics you want to pull off. What crazy moves would you like to design on the fly? And then basically clock blocker, doesn't add anything other than that he doesn't want to ride one of the dogs, probably. But he seems to find it charming when Rachel says to Bastard, "You're the stuff of nightmares." Um, let's see here. We're reminded of Skitter's terrible injuries and smoke inhalation. Tattletale tries to check in on her. She just talks about her injuries, and she's like, I mean, how are you doing, like, emotionally in your heart? She's like, I'm thinking. My heart is thinking. And then, boom, mid-sentence, Skitter's trying to tell Tattletale that she doesn't have a plan yet, but she's distracted as the most powerful noob in the world shows up. Eidolon. He's really powerful, and boy, is it cool to see him fight. But he kind of sucks. And everyone gets bad vibes from him. Tattletale's like, I didn't think it was smart to bring you. I thought specifically you shouldn't be here. And then Eidolon's like, don't even worry about it, bro. I can be immune. And then Tattletale's like, you don't know that. There seems to be some sort of thinker battle that goes on between Tattletale and Eidolon for a split second. And then he's like, are you looking for a weakness in my armor? And then she's like, I'll probably have to fight you, so yes. Then there's a couple pauses and gaps where they don't actually say anything, but then, like, Tattletale says, I surrender, it's fine. So obviously they're doing something that they can kind of sense about each other, which I think is great. They're having a little mind battle. Taylor has mind battles sometimes, but in this case, she can't keep up. She's just not psychic enough. Tattletale says she's been using her power all night, and it's in these, like, situations, she always, like, burns out her power and then has to, like, keep going for a long time after it's burned out. It's, like, really bad for her, I bet. But when it rains, it pours. She says that Noel's gonna go for Eidolon, like, right away, so he'll have to use his weaknesses against him. Eidolon gets pissed that she brings up the idea he might have weaknesses, and then he hits his hand on the table, and he makes a force field that bubbles everybody else out and keeps him and Tattletale in, and then Taylor tries to use bugs to listen through. The thing that really makes him do that is when she says that his power is going to be, it's like burning out over time. It's why he doesn't want to be teleporting in people. And then she brings up Alexandria not wanting to be here, which is like the exact moment he cuts the conversation, because he doesn't want her to perhaps spill the beans on things she may know or may not know. But the force field knocks over Rachel, which makes Rachel pissed, and she starts making Bentley into Big Bentley. Skitter's listening in on the conversation and trying to wave Rachel off. Miss Militia and Assault run into the room, and then they're sort of yelling back and forth around the force field bubble, which, I always thought would probably be, like, pretty funny. They're kind of trying to, like, crane their necks around a shitty force field bubble, and they're like, we didn't start a fight, really? And then Eidolon dismisses the force field, and he's like, I just wanted to have a private conversation. I'm sorry, I'll be getting some fresh air. With his Eidolon voice echo. Then she tracks his movement to sort of make sure he's really on the roof or whatever. And they get themselves together, but Rachel's still fucking pissed. 2 + 4 × 5 is here, and 45 minutes in the past. Cool. bu- 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 bu. Um, so Skitter has another, Greg says, whoa, time travel. Skitter has another coughing fit, and Miss Militia is being accusatory towards Tattletale again. She's like, I was just commenting on things that seemed a little odd. And Weld is like, I don't know. It seemed worse than that. Tattletale's like, it's all fine now. It's we talked it out. Miss Militia's at least nominally concerned for Skitter's horrible coughing fit, and she's like, I had a recent injury. And let's see here. They bring everyone together. There's a whole bunch of heroes here now. Chevalier and Mirden are here, along with a whole bunch of Protectorate and Ward members. Although I don't think there are any villains. I think that's one of the things about like what Tattletale was saying is that because it's an A class and not an S class, one of the biggest problems is that villains won't show up to help them. Miss Militia reads off their tentative ratings for Noelle, and it's Brute 8, Changer 2, and a combination of Striker Master with a rating of 10. And I agree with Tattletale. This seems too low. If at a baseline, she should have a mover. Her like lower body can run her at speeds that would net you a rating of like mover 2 minimum, probably, based on like if you were just a human who could move at that speed. So they're really just not thinking this through. So they bring up the ability to create clones, and the fact that Tattletale thinks that she's becoming potentially becoming an Endbringer, and they can't find her right now, and so they're gonna have to search her out to find Vista, who's just listed as a hostage, a member of the wards. They mention that they are going to use the same protocols against Hadhayosh, which probably just some other cape that we never hear about aside from this mention, who seemingly you have to employ similar tactics of like hit and run and staying away from any close encounters. So a phone call comes in and it's from Noelle, and they put it up on the screen, and Skitter can't tell what's happening, but apparently Noelle's on there, and she's got 5 different Vista clones, and she's like, clearly can tell, she's like, I can smell more capes there. I know you have more reinforcements in the Undersiders. Stuff like that. So, her dialogue is pretty unhinged. She clearly is going off the rails, etc. And she kind of lies about having killed Vista, or Tattletale will tell us she lied, and I'm willing to just spoil that Tattletale is right, that she did lie, that she didn't kill Vista, so she can continue to make more Vistas. She just still has Vista captured. And during the conversation, then she mentions how there were 6 Vistas, and they're like, 6? And then she's like, yeah, the last Vista, I don't know, the rest of them, they're all just staying here and giving me hugs and stuff, and the 6th one started gibbering about wanting to kill her family, and, ran off. And then they send out the wards, and they're like, oh my god. So they're going to have to go murder Vista Clone. All of her closest allies. It's terrible. And when Miss Militia asks if they can negotiate here, then Noelle offers them a deal. She says that if they kill the Underside... I'm just going to read her speech. Kill the Undersiders. Or hand them to me so I can torment them before I kill them. You can do it any time you want to. Just knock them out or hurt them or find a way to tell me where they are. If it's a choice between hurting one of you or hurting one of them, I'll hurt them. I promise. If I've taken someone hostage, you'll probably have a little while before the hostage is dead. You probably have a little... Just know that I'll trade you any of my hostages for any Undersider, anytime, any situation. When the Undersiders are dealt with, I'll sniff you out and kill all of the clones I made. I'll sniff out and kill all the clones I made. Then I'll let you try to kill me or imprison me. Do whatever. I don't care, because I don't think I'll be me much longer. I don't think I'm even me right now. Not the me I was. I'm rambling. They took away my only chance. My only chance to get well. Until they've paid for that, I'm going to make this hard on you, heroes. I don't think I can die, and I don't think I'm that easy to stop in other ways. I'll hunt you down, I'll copy you until you're all used up, let your copies ruin your reputations and your lives, and then I'll eat you. I'll do it to each of you, one by one, until you realize it's easier to go after the Undersiders than to come after me. Give me my revenge and this ends. So yeah. Oh yeah, Noelle's following the Star Wars logic on the cloning names. So there's Vista, and Vista. Just more and more eyes, but you gotta find some way to differentiate it vocally. But yeah, that's the end of the chapter. Again, amazing chapter. The conversations that they have, the brashness of what they say in front of the heroes, it's great. I love it. I love every second of the conference room. There's a positive and a negative to her lying about killing Noelle. And what I'm thinking is, the positive is that she's putting an artificial ticking clock on any time that she has any hero hostage. Even though she's giving up the leverage of having the existing hero she has, and she's keeping the utility of the fact that she can generate more vistas later. So, it's a decent gambit. I can see why she lies about it. But I had to think about it for a minute. Yeah, this chapter is amazing. Again, total banger. As for the other stuff, arc stuff, I love the structure of this arc. 2 chapters, then an interlude, 2 chapters, then an interlude. It just keeps doing it over and over again. So this is another 2 chapters, then an interlude. And the cliffhangers between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 are very light. They're like the lightest cliffhangers. But the cliffhangers at the end of 2 and 4 are heavier. So the fact that it goes away for an interlude chapter means that tension can actually build in a proper way. That's another reason not to skip the interludes if you're how some readers are I just want to read the Taylor chapters. I need to know. It's literally supposed to be building that tension during that chapter where you can't know. I really think that's baked into the structure of the work. So, yeah, I think these little cliffhangers at the end of 2 and 4 work great. And the fact that you have to sit through... the Kevin chapter, Kevin's a likable enough guy. So you have the Kevin chapter where at first you're where is this going? And then you're oh my god, it's sound, crazy stuff. But then, the next chapter after this one, you gotta sit through one of the worst people. He's on the level of Hookwolf in terms of unlikability of narrator of chapter. So, So we'll have to sit through some fucking bullshit next time. Listen to goddamn Justin. And his takes on the world. But Vic will be here, so between the two of us, I'm sure we'll yell at Justin plenty. But yes, I think this sort of gaps are great. Vale says, this is why not to skip an interlude if you are a interlude skippist. Definitely what they're called. But yeah, it's just really cool how, like, in basic, it's, like, subtle and not subtle, because, like, I wouldn't think about it if I wasn't specifically trying to think about the structure of the work, but it's also obvious when I think about it, like, the fact that these interludes make the pacing a really specific way for these chapters, whereas, like, the initial arcs didn't have this kind of thing, and the later arcs will, again, revert to not having it. So this portion of the story from, like, arc 15 to arc 19 feels it feels really different because of that structure of the arcs, and I like it a lot. Down to the characters. We get tons of great character interactions. I talked about most of them, but, like, Imp gets a moment to shine at the start where she, like, surprises the heroes, and I think is pretty mature. Like, she doesn't make any jokes or whatever. She just, like, immediately says, like, we need your help, actually. We are, as you just said, coming to you to beg for assistance. And so that's kind of cool. Regent does not get a lot to do. Let me see. Does he get any quips? Yeah, he's, like, here, but I don't think he says any lines. Yeah. It's a pretty serious situation, so he just shuts up. Gru, classic Gru, does not want to let Skitter be held hostage by the heroes. Greg says they would have had to pay him more if he had any lines. Exactly. The actor in the book chapter, he just stood there the whole time. Vale's got to read, and we'll catch the end afterward. Bye! Or, I mean, gotta leave, not gotta read. That's right. Vale's got to read. We'll see you later and or next time. Characters. So, Miss Militia accepts pretty easily the different stuff they say to diplomatically, like, deal with Rachel and stuff. And I feel like this is one of the many, like, early times that we see Miss Militia, like, willing to go outside the bounds of, like, she's not dumb about heroes and villains. She's very willing to work with villains and, like, cut them a lot of slack, and, like, she still thinks they're trying to pull something, but she understands their, like she's very accommodating of their needs in a way to get them as allies. And I think that's good, because it's just, like, just smart. So it just shows how smart she is, you know? And how able to control her, like, emotions and stuff she is. Because, like, I mean, a lot of the other heroes, the main reason they can't work with villains is just because they hate them. So that's pretty cool. And then Rachel is very Rachel in these chapters. I love when she's like, I don't know, that was then and this is now, about something as recent as a week ago. Really good little character moment there. Man, Tattletale really gets to shine. She and Miss Militia talk a bunch. She talks to Triumph a bunch, to Skitter a bunch. Her moment with Eidolon, I thought, was really good. It shows once again she's quite bold. And she's willing to be that way. Even when it puts her at risk. We all love Tattletale. We already know. Other characters. Clock Blocker, Dennis, our boy. He gets a big extended scene talking to Skitter. And I wish she could be more open with him and tell him more, because it's like, I obviously get why she doesn't defend her actions more, but I kind of would want to see what he'd have to say back to her, knowing more of her side of the story. And I think this is the best we're gonna get. Like, Skitter's still gonna be Skitter. Other people, we obviously see that Assault, just like before, is continuing to blame the Undersiders for Battery's death, so he's going to be a problem element for them. But we'll deal with him later. Other characters. Triumph. I was glad that Triumph got a chance to talk to Taylor. I thought the fact that she can't bring herself to apologize at first and then makes herself do it in the next chapter, I really like that. And the like weirdness of it from the perspective of Triumph, Clock Blocker, and Weld. And I also think it's good for her and Weld to have some of these, like, even if they're not directly talking to each other, these interactions where, like, Weld starts to get a sense for her over various conversations, I think. Yeah, anyway. That's another ship. Weld and Skitter. Why? Because I wanted to ship it. I guess not that many other notable characters. The deputy director and the various people working in the PRT office, like their reactions and stuff to things were kind of interesting and like good to see. We don't get to see that many non-capes, so I like when we see it. For Power's knowledge and world building, I mean, learning that she's got a whole pile of Vista clones is like confirmed for us, and it's like interesting stuff about Eidolon's power. We vaguely knew from two previous interludes that Eidolon's power is waning, but now the Undersiders know, etc. It's cool to see their little, as they gather and make a little war room inside the PRT offices, too. So, yeah. Anyway, I don't have that much more to say about it. I am going to open up. Hopefully it doesn't go too wild. Open up the portrait that I had made earlier. There we go. Yeah, I felt a little weird about this one. Not super great. Didn't love it, but it is my picture of Madison Clements. I was trying really hard to do this like two-tone hair thing of the person I was modeling it after, who had like clearly two layers like of really dark and really light hair, and man, it was just too hard. I'm gonna keep trying to like push myself and stuff and doing difficult stuff, but yeah, I don't know. It took me like all morning and I still wasn't very happy with it. And I did not catch up and do 2, but perhaps I shall. I still intend to get caught up and have sort of one a week post Arc 17. It'll just happen when it happens, and I am thinking that there's a pretty good chance I'm gonna like go back later and kind of redux some of these, like this one and probably the one of Jess that I did as the very first portrait, and Yeah, we'll see what happens. But I want to build up a good backlog of characters. I at least want to have like all the minor characters from arcs 1 to 8, the first little portion of the story. I have an idea for something, or more accurately, Vic talked about an idea and it made me go, "Oh man, we can make this awesome." Secret project in the works. 2 plus 4 times 5 is now 51 minutes behind. Okay, well, let's go on to audience participation. Boop, boop, boop. The audience said about the question, which was, between the Undersiders and the local heroes would you like to have seen an interaction like what we saw in these chapters? 2 plus 4 times 5 jokingly said Perrion and Flechette, with the emoticon that looks like a troll face to me. It's like, I'm not sure what characters it uses, but it sure is a full-on face using only ASCII characters or whatever. But 2 plus 4 times 5 goes on to say a different answer. Friendly social interaction that's just Imp and Regent versus Miss Militia and Kid Win. Or any Tinker who can track Imp. So it'd be like, gotcha. Like a very barbed interaction where they're talking back and forth between those two groups. Yeah, might be good. I bet it would be good. Vale says, I'd like to see a whole chapter of just Lisa and Amy talking. It would end with more destruction than any other conceivable power could cause in the story. It would be annoying to everyone involved, including readers, and it would be amazing. Yep. Sounds about right. Well, I don't have that much more to say. Great chapters, great week. Gonna just keep trying with these portraits. Someday I'll draw something I'm really happy with. But let's start up the outro music, which is the intro music. And let's read them links. The music used in this episode, as it will be for Arc 18 and 19, is Queen Scourge by ScarlettXOX. You can find her at twitch.tv/Scarlett_Rogue. Our Discord link can be found in the channel description and stream description. The author of the work being discussed can be supported on Patreon at patreon.com/Wildbow. The full text of the work is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com. There is also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org. Goodbye to everyone, and thank you for being at the stream. A last cheers to Greg as he has cheered me. Cheers.